Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, the Game Boy Geek here. Back in 2004, a game called Power Grid came out, and it has for the last 20 years been one of the most popular Euro-style games out there. And it has had tons of expansions. It has had a few spin-offs, Power Grid Factory Manager, Power Grid First Sparks. And now, in 2024, a new version has come out called Power Grid Outpost. Now, this was just released at the Spiele fair in Germany. It's coming out into North America towards the end of the year here by Rio Grande Games. And this game is the most like the original Power Grid, but still being different. I did put out a video once the rules were available about a few weeks ago, saying what was different about it, but now I've had a chance to actually play this in my house. And so now I'm going to show you a little bit about how the game works. I will be sort of referencing the original Power Grid because those that are watching this video probably are familiar with that. And then I'll show you what I think about it on the other side. In Power Grid Outpost, you're going to be spending money to purchase power plants. Well, not just power plants now, cards. Some of them are power plants, some of them are shelters, some of them are technologies that give you special abilities. That's some of the main differences that's in this Power Grid Outpost versus the original. Another huge difference in this version is the connection costs are completely random every game, which is awesome. Now this board is set up into 3 sections. There's a large section you can see in the middle. There's a small darker section here and another different section over here, a lighter section. And so you play with a certain amount of sections depending on the players. But again, the big difference is that like to go from here to here, it's 1. To go from here to here, it's 7. But every game it's different because these are sort of randomized. I actually hope they can figure out some tokens like this for the original Power Grid because, wow, that would really open things up. Now, just like the normal Power Grid, you're trying to have a certain amount of houses or cities powered, and whoever powers the most houses or cities in the round that someone gets a certain amount of them powered, that changes depending on the amount of players, is going to be the winner. So you'll be building your routes, your networks, you're going to be building cities, power plants, shelters, things like that. Let's show you. Now, you're going to be auctioning things, and you're going to be trying to spend a minimum amount of money. This one starts at 2, this one 4, 5, 10. You can only bid on the top 4 in the normal market. This is the future market. You can see what's coming up possibly next. And people will be auctioning. So once per round, you're going to be able to say, hey, I want this one. And you'll go to auction it and say, hey, I want it for 4. And people go in clockwise order until everyone passes, and that player pays the amount of money to the bank and gets this power plant. They don't get to use it right away. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But you're doing an auction here. Everyone will get 1 card at most per round. In the first round, you actually do 2 auctions back to back to kind of seed your company, if you will. Now, unlike normal power plant, there's only 1 resource in the game. Essentially, it's workers. This one says, hey, if you have 4 workers, you can power 3 cities. 2 workers powers a city. 1 worker powers 1 city. And as you can imagine, as the cards get more expensive, they become more efficient. However, there's different types of cards. There's shelters, which is going to allow robots to live there and make it easier for you to produce electricity. I'll go over the details of that later. There's also technologies. These are special cards. Like if you win this one, for the rest of the game, everything you buy is $5 less. This one, for the rest of the game, every power plant you have gives you 1 more power. So there's all these different technologies as well, which also makes this game very different. So let's say we did buy this one like this. Now each player has their own player board now, and you put the power plant to the left there, and you're going to need to unlock some of these spots, like this is the power plant spot, and this is the shelter spot. You're going to need to unlock these spots in order to actually use these, because just because they're here, you don't actually get to use them until you can get them on here. After everyone's gone through the auctions, you're gonna like build out your network and in your company. And so this almost puts both phases together in the original Power Grid, where you would buy resources and then build your network. You're kind of doing that both in the same phase here. So what you'll do is on your, the first time you place a house anywhere, you start your network anywhere. So let's say I am going to start my house like normal. Now, just like normal Power Grid, only the first cheapest one is available till you get to a certain step 2 in the game, and then this one's available, then this one's available. This is the cost, 10, 15, 20, so the earlier you get to somewhere, the better it is. You can only have 1 house in each sort of city, so I would pay 10 and go here. However, I bought a power plant. There's new spots. This is a power plant spot. This is $5. I would spend another $5. I would take the piece off my player board and place it there. The most you can have is something here and 1 house there. Now let's back up just a moment because after you buy cards, new ones will come out. And again, just like a normal power grid, these will always shift to be in order as to like how expensive they are. And so one other thing to note, and obviously they get better as you get in there, is that there's some plants that there's multiples of. Like this one, there's a bunch of them, right? And so if you buy this one, it's 5. You now have a shelter. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But no more new cards come out. This helps seed people with sort of your engine building for resourcing. So let's talk about how these work. Because you saw me just build a power plant, and because I put that piece onto the power plant on the board, I now can take any power plant I have on the side, put it here. This is sort of now active. You can always swap and rearrange. You're not limited to 3 power plants like the original. You can actually end up having 4 of them at any one time, but you can freely swap things from the side of your board to here. So if I got one that was better than this and I hadn't yet built the power plant to be able to place it there, I can swap this out for another one. It gives you more flexibility as to what you're powering on that turn. Now, we have these shelters here. So again, let's say we spent the 10 here, we spent the 5 here, and we want to build a shelter. Well, there's a shelter spot right here. Luckily, the connection cost is only 1 because we're the first ones basically to do this. So we spend 1 plus the 5, and we put that shelter there. And that's going to allow us to use this. I'm going to show you what this means in a minute. Essentially, this is going to allow us to have a worker that's going to work for us every round because he gets to live there for free. Now, the power plant we bought can power 3 cities, so 3 houses. I have 1. So if I want to, and I had enough money, I likely probably wouldn't this early in the game, but if I want to, I could come over here. This would be $5 and 10, so I could spend 15 to build a house. But look at this, 9. Bad connection costs. We're not gonna really want to go there. We're probably gonna wanna go here and then here. Now, once you've started your network, you're always building off of anything. This is considered part of your network, even though it's not a house. You can always build further out, but you're always paying the extra connection costs. So you can see that even just having these different power plants and shelters and connection costs already changes everything. But let's talk about how you power things, because that's even more different. So let's say we ended up building that second house out there. So we have 2 houses built. And we have a power plant that if I use 4 workers, I could power 3. So I kind of want to get a third one out there because that's going to be most efficient, but again, power grid's really big in turn order, and the further you are, the higher you are in turn order, which isn't a great thing. So let's just say we have 2 houses here, and we want to do this. Now, what happens is, and again, this phase happens right after you finish building out. Other people don't get to build and things like that. Like you're building things out, like the houses, your network, and then you're sort of building your company as well. Now there are tons of these workers. There's a different amount depending on how many players. 5 to 6 players, you add these 2. 4, this one. 4, you add this one. 2 or 3 players, there's always 3 per block. Now it's kind of hard to see, and it actually is in person as well. It's one of my negatives we'll talk about. Any worker here costs 2. These ones cost 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. So we're going to need to buy them. Think of them as the resources in the original power grid, but there's only 1 resource. So we're going to need to build to basically hire these workers to run the power plant. Now the way this works is I need 4 workers. I'm going to be able to place 1 here for free because they're basically going to be in my shelter and they're living there running this thing, which means I need 3 others to power this because 1's going to come from here, 3 others. So we first calculate the 3. I need 3 workers in order to do this, and we hire them seasonally, meaning they're only going to be here for 1 round. And we hire them first because they're going to be the cheapest for us. So we need 3 of these guys. So it's going to be 2 times 3, it's going to be $6. But then we're getting this one for free because they're in our shelter. But you pay for the seasonal ones first because that's going to be cheaper for you. So technically this one is here. Now, we are going to be able to put these on like this, 3, and the 4th one comes here. So that's sort of building up your company. We've got everything done. Then it's going to be the next player's turn to build out, employ their employees, build their company up, do all that sort of stuff. So you're kind of like dealing with the resources, which is the workers, and the map building all in one phase. And it's a little bit more predictable what the costs will be than the original power grid. And then once everyone does that, bureaucracy, you're just going to make some money here. So here we have 4 workers. It's going to power 3 houses. We actually can power only 2 of them because we have 2 of them out there. So we look at this and we get $33 because we could power 2. We sort of wasted a third. We could have made 44 if we had another house out there, but we couldn't afford it at the time. So we're going to get that. Now what's going to happen once everyone gets money, this is going to go back there because you're always going to have these, and then these go back in the market. You need to hire them next time or build some shelters to let them live there. It's almost like engine building for your resources there. And each round, better and better. Cars are going to be coming out, and again, there's a lot of different technologies. This one allows you to basically hire seasonal workers for $3 less. Power plants are going to get better. 2 workers get you 6 towards the end, or 3 get you 7 cities. 4 people can live in this shelter on the 33 card. This technology allows you to place a house. You basically place it right on here, and a power plant, and a shelter, and it doesn't essentially cost you anything. It's zero. It's whatever this is going to be, but that's it for the whole game. You have this. Somebody's going to allow you to put workers into robots. The robots are going to allow you to continue to work every round, and you're getting additional robots. It's almost like engine building on engine building. So there's a lot of different things in this game here. But it's very much like Power Grid, where you're trying to have the most power the most when someone crosses that winning line, depending on the player count. Okay, first of all, let's talk about what I liked about the game. First of all, this is more different than any of the expansions that I've played. Now, I have not played all of the expansions, but I do have quite a few different expansion maps of Power Grid. A few years ago, I bought like a ton of them all at once. And so this feels more different than just buying a new map that has a slight rule tweak or two. But it's still true. It still feels like Power Grid. Like the two big spin-offs, Power Grid Factory Manager, Power Grid First Sparks, they also felt similar to Power Grid because they had auctions and you're doing things like that, but they also felt pretty different as well. In fact, Factory Manager I still like, I still have that one. First Sparks didn't stand the test of time for me, but Factory Manager is still a great game. One that you can play in about 60 minutes. It's a lot shorter than the original Power Grid. Similar but different. This one is, again, more different than the expansions, but still feels like Power Grid. It brings in some of the things from Factory Manager that I loved, like the workers. Like in this game, you needed workers to run your machines in Factory Manager, and you could get robots that would just run them every round and stuff. It's fun because both of those things are in this game. One of them in the technology card, one of them is the main mechanism of getting things. Is that sort of he brought in some things from that. Now, I've never played the original Outpost that this was from the 90s, that this was inspired by, so I can't speak to how those things pulled over. But yeah, it's different in that regard. Now, building out the shelters and power plants, in addition to houses, is a big different thing, right? So it's because in the original Power Grid, you're building out your network only with houses, right? And all you got to worry about is houses. You buy power plants and you just have them. Here, you've got to not only build houses to build your network, but you're also buying those power plants and shelters. And the interesting thing is, like, you might not have enough to extend your network to somewhere to build a house there because maybe it's too expensive, or maybe there's already someone else's house there and you're not in the next step where you can get a second house in there. But you need to get there and you want to get there. You pay the connection cost, you could put a power plant there or a shelter, right? And now that is your network, and now you can spiral out from that, right? Maybe there was a better cost in a different direction that was actually cheaper to go through by spending 2 different ways to get there, right? So that's a different thing too. But I like that you're building out both shelters and power plants and on top of houses. And it gives the network building another layer of depth as to what you're building and where you're building and where can you build things. You can't build shelters in every place. You can't build power plants in every place. Both of those you can build about every other place. So it does take, if you like the network building of Power Grid, but you wish there was a little bit more, maybe another layer, that's what this brings you here. I like that you're building houses and buying resources in the same step. Now in the original Power Grid, right, you go through a step where you're buying resources in resource turn order. Then you're buying those resources and calculating things as to how much you think it's going to cost for you to get to where you need to get to with the houses, right? And so you're doing a little bit of prediction and calculating, right? And it's 2 different steps. Here, you are basically building your network, building your company, building your houses, and buying your resources, which in this case is just the workers, all in the same step. I like that these are together because if you were the type of person, now look at, if the original Power Grid, you're like, the game's way too mathy, I didn't like it. I don't think this change is going to now all of a sudden make you like Power Grid. But if you really like Power Grid, you're like, I just wish it was a little bit more predictable on my costs. I wish the mathy wasn't such as crunchy, but I wish it was crunchy, but not quite as crazy of me trying to figure out both costs of resources and then figuring out where I think other people are going to go and then making sure I leave myself with enough money to do that. Like, if you didn't like that many steps of calculations, which is a lot, I love that, by the way. If you did not like that, but you do like Power Grid, I think this is going to fix that problem for you because, again, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to build houses. I'm going to put this power plant in here. Oh, and by the way, now I'm going to get all the people that I need, right? All in one step. You don't have to predict what people are doing. You don't have to worry what other people are doing. You just do everything at once, and you're calculating everything at the same time without any variations, without any variability. It's just, you know what it is. And I think that's going to help a lot of people that thought that it was a little too mathy. Now the game is still mathy, but it's a little less, it's more predictable. So I like having that in the same step because again, it makes it a more straightforward process as to building your network and building your houses. It really streamlines some things out there. I like that you have the flexibility of swapping out power plants and shelters. So in the original Power Grid, you have 3 power plants, right? If you want a 4th one, you just throw one away and you put the new one in there. In this game, sometimes, depending on the power plants you have and how many houses you have, you might want to swap in one and swap out one. Sometimes you might have 3 power plant spaces, right? You have them filled. And you're like, well, you know what? I only have 10 houses to power. With this setup, I actually could power 14. I don't need to power 14. Let me put this one over here, bring this other one in. I only have to power 10, but now I get to use about 3 less resources, right? So it's interesting because as you're at different steps in the game, you have the flexibility of swapping in and out power plants and shelters to make yourself run as most efficient as possible. And I thought that was a really interesting twist. Gives you more flexibility, more agency. I like that the randomized connection costs. Oh my gosh. When I first heard about this, I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. It is awesome. It makes every game on the same map feel completely different. Because it's like you are looking at the board this game and you're looking for the opportunities. And you're trying to find the best places to go to get the cheapest connection costs. And it's going to change every game. I think that's amazing. And 2F Spiele and Rio Grande, please, 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 please come out with a mini expansion for the main Power Grid, both sides of the boards for the connection costs. Because I already counted the amount of connection costs that are in here to see if it would work with the USA map. It doesn't. There's too many connections. Those connection costs go up to like, I think 29 on the USA map. These ones go up to, I forget, I think 9 is the highest one here. Please, if you're listening, make a mini expansion or a mini promo pack or something with balanced sort of connection cost randomized things. Make it a double-sided tile. Make one be one side of the original board and the other side of the token be the other side of the original board. That would be awesome, please, pretty please, with sugar on top. Because that was one of the best things of this game, is that every game feels completely different, even on the same map. I like that there's less upkeep for resources between rounds, because again, you're not going, oh, you're going to put in 2 uranium and 3 trash and 4 oil and 5 coal. And it changes depending on which step you're in and how many players you're in. That part was always a little fiddly, but once you got it set, you kind of did it, but it was some upkeep. There's not that upkeep here. It's put all the workers back. That's it. Like it streamlined things up quite a bit. So if there was too much upkeep for you in Power Grid, the original, this one fixes that problem too. I like that the one resources, workers, and technologies, which is sort of like kind of similar to some of the mini promo packs and expansions that you've seen for Power Grid, where you bid on this card and it does something special, right? So again, another callback to other things that have worked in different experiments. And of course, the robots and stuff from the factory manager and such. I like that this was sort of like a greatest hits, where like Friedman went back to some other ideas that he tested in different ways and then put them all together into one. It's just a great recipe here. I like that there's one resource, which means it's super tight and super mean. Granted, you can't just like hoard the resource to put twice as much as it can hold like in regular Power Grid, which I do love that aspect, but you can hold, you can put your shelters up there and hold the bunch. You will hold more than possibly you can supply, because you'll fill up your shelters, but you might not be able to power that many with your power plants, but that's okay. So it's not quite as brutal as the original, but having one resource makes it super tight. So overall, I think they did a lot of things to make Power Grid better. And just to let you know, Power Grid is in my top 10 of all time. I love this game. This is a really good version that I think a lot of people will like it better. For me, I am still torn. I have a soft spot in my heart for the original Power Grid. I can't tell you which one I like better yet. It's at least a tie. And that's saying a lot, because the original, again, is in my top 10. It's like, let's play Power Grid, but a different version of it. It feels Power Grid-y, but it's still so different. It's just, I don't know what to say. I don't know which one I'll play. I flip a coin, because they both give me the Power Grid itch, but doing it in different ways. Let's talk about the negatives here. Freedom and Freeze's games always are super streamlined. They're always very easy to play. The mechanisms are streamlined for the players, and there's always so much depth for the little amount of complexity that's there, and I love that. The downside to a lot of their games is the rules are never great. And the person who's running the game typically has to do more ballet acts and more special exceptions and such to make sure the game runs right. When does the step 2 card come up? Well, if it's in step, when does the step 3 card come up? Well, if it's in the step, do this, this, and this. If it's in the step, do this, this, and this. There's always like these little exceptions that you always have to kind of go back to the book, even if you're familiar with the game, just to make sure you're doing it right. This game has some special exceptions. The biggest one being, in addition to some of the other ones that I already mentioned that are still there, the stacked cards. Having the stacked cards is cool. It's like, oh, there's like a handful of 5s, which is great because everyone can get some shelters right off the bat. The downside of that is it's like, oh, okay, if you get cards of the same number and they're in the top row, just stack them. But if you get the same number and it's in the bottom row, then it goes to the right. Well, if the cards move from the top row to the bottom row, then you do this. And if the cards move from the top row down to the bottom row and they're stacked and you do that, there's more special cases again. Again, they don't come up often, but you think they won't come up often, but they end up coming up sometimes. And so the game does not take away some of those special exceptions. If anything, they've added a few of those, so the game might be just slightly a little bit harder to manage from the person who's running the game, which you can still create a good experience, but those are still there. And those have always been a negative in some of these games, and it's still there. The next thing is the backwards calculating of the seasonal workers is kind of non-intuitive. You look and you're like, oh, I have shelters that hold 3 workers. Oh, I need 7 workers to power all these power plants, okay? If I can hold 4 workers and I need 7, that means I need 3. But I have to buy the 3 before I do this other thing. So you have to figure out how many you have, figure out how many you need, figure out what the difference is, and then first buy that many from the market. It's not hard to do. This is not derivatives or integrals or differential equations here, which I did in my engineering schools, but it just takes a minute to think through, and it's just like non-intuitive. But I get why they did it, because they want you to be able to hire the cheapest workers for the seasonal workers. And mechanically wise and balance wise, that makes sense. It's just, that part is kind of hard to teach. And it's hard for people to wrap their brains around it until like the end of the 3rd round. Because like, wait, how do we do this again? Oh, okay, I need 4, I have 7. I have 4, I need 7, I gotta buy 3. Let me look at it, okay, 2, 3, 3, that's $8. Okay, I'll put those there and I'll bring the other ones. It's not hard, it's not rocket science, but it is a bit fiddly. But I get why they did it. So that's a little bit negative there. The other thing, from a production standpoint, the cost of the workers, you could even see it on the overview. I even had the workers laid down flat, so it's easier to see the board. I don't know why they put the cost of the workers at the top of the box when all the workers are blocking that, even if they're staying down. The cost of those workers should have been below those workers, so everyone that's sitting at the board, on the sides that you'd normally be sitting at when you play the game, can actually see how much those things cost. Now, granted, they started a certain amount, and each box is $1 more. It's not hard, but again, it's something that could have been detailed too. And the last negative thing is also sort of a little bit of production thing is I get why they did the font they did, because they want it to be space themed. But quite honestly, some of these fonts are a little hard to read. If you're just glancing at numbers, 6s can kind of look like 5s. So, and some of the numbers, just the fonts, they're thematic, but from a playability standpoint, some of them can be hard to read, especially at first glance. A little minor nitpick there. So that's it. This is my positive and negatives. Overall, I think this game is absolutely amazing. This was my #1 most anticipated game at Eschen Spiele, and it's lived up to that. It's fantastic. If you liked Power Grid or you love Power Grid and you want something that's going to feel like Power Grid but also be very different, this is exactly what you're looking for. If you felt like Power Grid was a little too mathematical, a little too formulaic, a little too much math with not knowing all the details that you're using to calculate things, I think this will fix that problem for you. If you just thought, I don't like the amount of math in Power Grid, this is not going to fix that for you. It'll still be there, but it's going to be more streamlined. So for all those reasons, this is getting a saxophone serenade. It's staying in my gaming library. It's going to go right with the other Power Grids. It's been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationship borders. I hope you for the next one you love. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and their 4.5 Kickstarter introduced the new Galactic Minecraft and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. The campaign recently ended, but it's not too late to pledge late at GameToppersLLC.com.